for inviting us tonight. We've also brought our police chief, James Fry, over here, in case there are questions that James can answer as well. Our hope tonight is to give you some background on why the City Council has elected to pursue a new police station, look at what we have now, where it came from, and the process. First of all, in order to incur long-term debt, which means outside of the city's budget year, which runs from October 1 to September 30th, if you're going to incur any debt outside of that, it requires a vote of the people. Idaho Constitution states that you have to have a 2/3 vote of your citizens in order to have debt. So this is something that we can't do with our current annual budget. We have debt capacity in the city of about $21 million, meaning that if the City Council wanted to, they could ask the voters to approve up to $21 million of debt. Council has not done that. Moscow has a really good track record of issuing debt when it's necessary. We have no general obligation bond debt now. General obligation bonds are supported by taxes. When this initiative, should it pass, what will happen is you will see an incremental increase in your property taxes, which we'll talk about in a few moments. But Council, since I've been here since 1992, has passed 3 separate GO bonds. One was for the dog pound, one was for, or animal shelter, excuse me, one was for Fire Station number 3, and the other was for the Hamilton Low Aquatic Center. Those have all been paid off. Hamilton Low is the only one that went to the 20-year term. Fire Station number 3 was paid off, I believe, in about 8 years on a 10-year bond, and of course the animal shelter was paid off fairly quickly as well. Some would say we probably ought to be looking at a new animal shelter, and I'm sure that's going to happen one of these days as well. We've got some slides we'd like to show you, and there's a short video of this as well. I'd encourage anybody, if you have questions as we're going through, the mayor's going to be roving around with the portable mic. I will be giving the facts, and the mayor will be able to talk on amplifying some of those things as well. So first, the current Moscow City Hall started its life as a creamery. And up until sometime prior to 1968, when the city bought it, it had several different uses. You see J&J Glass, those of you who've been around here a while remember J&J Glass. That was located in what used to be City Hall. In 1968, the city purchased the building for a new City Hall. So at that time, when I first came to Moscow in 1992, all city governmental operations were in that building. So you had administration, the council chambers, the mayor's offices, everything was there. And the police department took up half of that building. So we were quite a bit smaller then. As you can see, in 1990 we had about 18,500 residents. And that has grown in 2018 to 25,146 residents. So as we go up, we require more space, more services. The police department typically adds police to cover the shifts that they need. And as you cover those shifts, you have more area to cover. You need additional police officers, and that's one of the reasons we need a new building as well. Issues and challenges. We did a facilities plan back in 2015. When I first came here, we moved out, we took over the, let me see if the next slide does it. No, it does not. We took over the old post office where City Hall is located now in about 1994. The city purchased it in 1977, I believe, and the senior center was located in there. Later on, we got a community development block grant to develop the second floor, and city operations, government city operations, moved to the 3rd floor of City Hall about 1994. At that time, the police took over the whole 4th Street facility. And that worked for a while. They had fewer officers at that time. There was a lot of remodeling that went on in those days. Unfortunately, we couldn't afford to bring somebody in to remodel it, so it was typically done by city staff. The chief will tell you a few stories, I'm sure, about wearing a tool belt as well to put up some walls, creating an interview room, those sorts of things. So it's gone through a lot of iterations in that period of time. Well, as we moved through, we wanted to do a strategic plan back in 2002, and at that time we realized that we didn't have enough comprehensive planning tools. We didn't know what financially where we were going to be, and we hadn't assessed all of our facilities. So we started that process. It took us about 12 years to get all of that done, and one of the results of one of those is the facilities plan. The comprehensive facilities plan looked at all city facilities and looked at potential city growth for the next 20 to 30 years. And they would look at services provided, if you added staff, where was it going to go? Were there things that, city facilities that had become obsolete and were inefficient? Well, one of the things that they looked at the police station was that it was too small. It's about 9,600 square feet, and the police staff has outgrown the facility. We'll talk a little bit more, and we have a video that will explain it as well. It's located on a one-way couplet system. In 1980-81, when ITD installed the couplet, we used to have chip trucks running down Main Street. ITD came in, and of course the south couplet is Jackson Street, the north couplet is Washington Street. Unfortunately, it stranded the 4th Street Police Facility one way. So, as the chief can explain a little later, I'm sure, making emergency responses out of a one-way street, the only way to go south is either to go out onto Washington, turn around, go across 3rd Street, and go down south on Jackson, or you can go down the alley between Washington and Main Street, which is a little bit dangerous in and of itself. So the access isn't very good. We also have, it's a building that was never designed to be a police facility. Modern police facilities now have security. They have, when you interview witnesses, when you interview people, some people are suspects, having to walk them all the way through the public area of the police station poses some hazards. So there are a lot of those sorts of things that are at issue. I would invite you to, if you get a chance, on the city's website there is a 15-minute video narrated by the police chief that talks about all that, and it's a virtual tour of the police facility. So you can see some of the challenges, see some of the things, the remodeling that's gone on, just to get things in a place where you have room to do stuff. A great example is evidence and property. There's just not enough room. Idaho law requires that for felony cases, I believe you retain evidence for 5 years. For misdemeanor cases, you retain evidence for 1 year. So if you have any volume of cases at all, you have quite a stack of property that you're trying to hold on to. It's got to be held in a secure location for legal purposes, and frankly, in the police station now, it's secure, but it's stuffed in every nook and cranny behind a locked door that you can find. So it's pretty inefficient that way. If you want to read this, and you can find this again on the city's website, it talks about the shortcomings of the police station. It also talks about a couple of other departments that also were facing some facility challenges. One of those is the Community Development Department, Bill Belknap's department. They do planning and zoning, building codes, that sort of thing. And our engineering department that handles all the public facilities, the streets, water, sewer, and that sort of thing. They're located in the Paul Mann building. The Paul Mann building used to be the Idaho Employment Office. It's located on Jefferson and 2nd Street. We purchased that back in the late 90s and moved operations in there as well. Well, since that time, again, services have expanded. And as they expand, we hired a building official, we hired a permits clerk, everything to try and make our services more efficient. Unfortunately, it's a fairly small building, and as those services have expanded to meet the needs of the community, there's just not enough room. So one of the things that we'd like to do with this bond is the main objective is to build a police station, but in doing so, they will vacate the 4th Street facility. And when we look at available office space, we could remodel that, and part of this bond is to remodel that facility for a home for community development and engineering. The idea is to get those services as close to downtown as possible. The Mann building then, which is structurally sound, it's got some things that need to be done to it, but fairly structurally sound, and will not take very much money to repurpose. We'll move our information systems department in there. Currently, they're located out of the Egan Youth Center, quite a ways from downtown and quite a ways from most of the services that they provide. All of their servers and that sort of thing are in the downtown location, and our people are out at the Egan Youth Center. So a lot of inefficient time is spent shuttling back and forth. So we'd like to put them in the repurposed man building. We'd also like to have some storage space there. Right now, city's permanent records are in the basement of City Hall. City Hall is on Washington Street, and yes, it floods. Not all the time, but I'd say 1 out of 3 years we have issues down there. In fact, today, city crews were outside at a storm drain. We have a storm drain right next to the City Hall basement. And they were evacuating water out of there to make sure that water didn't come up and flood any of the city's records. So we'd like to create some permanent storage in the man building as well. Okay, we did finally get a strategic plan done in 2016. After we'd done all our comprehensive planning, we went ahead and presented the council with what we refer to as major challenge areas. And major challenge areas are those sorts of things that we identify as acting as a challenge, if you will, or an obstacle to creating the type of city and the type of services that you like. So we had internal and external challenge areas. One of the internal challenge areas that was defined right away was the police building. I think from the day that I walked into City Hall in 1992, people were saying we needed a new police building. It wasn't necessarily space at that time as much as accessibility. There are challenges. By law, we create opportunities, ADA opportunities for all of our citizens to interface with city staff. If you look in the police station, there's only one ADA accessible ingress and egress from that building. It's on the back door. In order to get in, you need to tap a button. Somebody in the front office will talk to you, and they have to go all the way through the police station in order to let somebody in a wheelchair or someone who has a handicap in. Well, that's not very inviting to the community, and frankly, one of the things that we're very proud of here is our community policing philosophy. Our goal is education and compliance rather than regulation. And the chief's officers do a great job at that. But to do that, they need to interface with the public. We have a very good student resource officer program. We have bicycle patrol. We patrol the University of Idaho campus where we have a couple of officers who are up there full-time. The whole idea is to contact our citizens so that they become very comfortable with police and they view them as a resource rather than as somebody to be feared. In order to do that, you need to interface with the public. This building does not do that. And you can see all the things that we just talked about. It's not just secure location, lack of space, and insufficient storage. Okay, so the council told us in 2016, this is something that we want staff to research. So we started doing that. Those of you who are, strategic plans aren't all that exciting, but to us, it's one of those things that once the council gives the direction, we go out and we try to make it happen. And we take steps to do that. So the first step was, council was saying, we'd like to look into a new police station. How will we pay for that? Well, obviously, we're going to pay for it with some kind of voter-approved bond. As I said, council does not put bonds out very often. So it's got to be something that is a big challenge to the council to do that. So they said, okay, we're going to have to go out for a bond. We need to find a location first. So we assessed all the property. We asked the council, what is the main thing that you need out of this? And they said they wanted a secure police facility for our employees and was accessible and provided the best police services to the community. We asked the chief and his officers, what do you need in this? Obviously security, a good place to work, accessibility was huge. For my part, I felt and staff felt, and we found out the community also feels that way, you want to keep it in central Moscow if you can, as close to downtown. That police presence downtown and accessible to the public really creates a sense of community. And, you know, I'd say that it's a calming effect downtown as well. So we wanted a location that was fairly accessible to downtown, that was easily accessible for emergency services. So we started looking at sites, and we cataloged, I'm sure, every site from Mountain View Road all the way to the west side of Moscow. We looked at 2 sites north of town. They're a little far from downtown, but they would have worked. Neither of those sites met the need for accessibility, and they were extremely expensive. As you might guess, when the city is in the market for property, that property hardly ever is discounted. So we looked around there. We looked at the recycling center. In fact, that was the focus of our first assessment. The recycling center, and as part of the sanitation strategic plan, was that we needed to move the recycling center because the site was too small with the commodities we were taking, the baling operation, and the yard waste drop-off. So naturally, it made sense to vacate that site. When they vacated that site, could that site be used for a police station? And everybody knows where the recycling center is, right? So it was a nice site. We looked at it. It could work. But of course, if you're going to move the recycling center, you better find out if that's what the public wants. So we asked the public. We put out a survey of citizens, and the citizens said, we want a recycling center. We want it to be about 2.5 acres big. We want it to have the same services that are offered now, and we want it to be within the city of Moscow. So we started looking for recycling center sites, and there are none. So it was either move it out of town or leave it where it was. So the decision was to leave it where it was. Toward the end of that process, we were approached by Griffin Medical Center, who now owns the federal building at 5th Street, between 4th and 5th Street on Washington. That was a pretty big building, houses a post office. It could have been repurposed. We spent a year assessing that building. Structurally, we looked at operations, what it could house. It's about a 50,000 square foot building, quite a bit bigger than what we needed for a police station. But we were also trying to keep the post office there. We could have put additional city offices on the 3rd floor. The police would have part on the 1st floor and then the 2nd floor. We worked and worked and worked on that. It turned out that it was going to be way too expensive for what we needed. The location was perfect. Right in the heart of downtown. It even had a parking lot right across 5th Street that would have been nice as well. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. The cost was just too prohibitive. So we were back to square one. So we started looking again. Where can we find a place? We looked at a place behind the Idaho Inn on 3rd Street. We looked at a piece of property out on Mountain View. We looked at a piece of property, and the one we finally settled on, the council settled on, was a property at the corner of 95 and Southview, just north of Pape Machinery and just west of the Grove Apartments. It's a good site. We've got it under contract. The contract states that we have until about June 30th to exercise an option to purchase the property. It's one of the few properties that's big enough and has the access that is necessary for a police department. One of the things that we were also concerned about, quick access to downtown and quick access to the University of Idaho, which, as I mentioned, we provide police services to the U of I, and if there's an emergency, our officers need to get there quickly. They can do that off that site on 95. So we went through that, and of course our local newspaper talked about some of the things that we went through. But what's happening now is the recycling center will be staying where it is. There will be some revamping to that site, but we wanted to remove any issue of moving the recycling center if that was going to have an impact on the police bond. So that is staying where it is, and we're focusing on the site on the south end of town. Okay, one of the issues that people ask too is, why don't you guys partner up with the county? The county talks every now and then, I haven't heard it lately, but they would like a new sheriff's office. And the answer to that is that in 2007, we went through a huge study to see if we could have a joint facility. There are some differences between municipal police services and sheriff's offices. The sheriff has to run a jail. The city does not run a jail. Sheriff has a civil division. We do not have a civil division. The sheriff needs to be located within Latah County because it's a county service, doesn't need to be located within the city of Moscow. The sheriff needed a site, or needs a site, roughly 15 acres large. Our site can be less than 3 acres to provide services. In 2007, when we went through this exercise, it became very apparent that the jail sheriff's part of this was going to be pretty big. And the only place that could house it was going to be out on Lewis River Drive or State Highway 8. So it just didn't serve the needs. If that happened, we would have to go have some sort of satellite office in downtown for city police services. So it didn't make sense from an efficiency standpoint either. So you can see some of the differences here. Okay, more than 15 acres, less than 3 acres. So we have some pretty good differences. I have no doubt that the sheriff's office at some point is going to ask the county voters to look at the current jail facility. But it just doesn't meet the joint needs of the city and the county. But it wasn't like we didn't try to do that. But this is something where we need to move ahead now. County's not ready to move ahead, and we have differences in what we need. Okay, what is it going to cost? We looked at a lot of different financing. We did the best estimate we could, including the cost of the property. It's just shy of $8 million, $7,887,000. That will, at today's prices, and actually there's a little bit of contingency there to make sure when we have inflation we can do it. But that's the cost of the police facility. One of the reasons we chose the site that we chose is the streets are either in, or the owner of the property, the sellers, are responsible for putting the streets in. Those of you who've had any involvement in development know that the public improvements around the site often can have a huge cost to the site. This site already is taken care of. Renovating the 4th Street building, the current police station, is about $1.5 million. The HVAC, Chief can tell you all about that. HVAC, roof, there's a bunch of things that need to be done to it, but again, it's a 9,600 square foot building. To be able to renovate that for governmental purposes for $1.5 million is a bargain. The Paul Mann building, as I said, isn't going to take a lot to redo it. $132,000 will get that in good shape and will serve the city for the next 30 years at least. By the way, we did have a structural engineer take a look at that facility, and it does have great bones. It just needs to be renovated. Bond financing costs, we'll talk about that in a moment, but 2.21% bond. Bonds are at an all-time low, and if we are going to get any sort of long-term financing at this time, now's the time to do it. 2.2% per year in interest. Total project cost $9.638704. The city also is the beneficiary of a really good bond rating. You guys probably remember 2007 to 2009 when the only way you could get a good bond rating was to get a bond insurance company to stand behind you, and everybody had AAA rating until they found out that maybe those ratings weren't the best. We went out and got a AA- rating on our own. So they look at the amount of debt the city has, the tax base, the management, the leadership. Are you taking care of business, essentially? And we got an independent bond rating of AA-. That translates to a better interest rate. If we had a bond rating of A or B+, that interest rate would likely be above 3 or 4%. So it's a good advantage to the city at this point. Okay, what does it mean to you as an individual? This is valuation of your home.
Excuse me, Gary. He's making me dry listen.
Don't worry, he'll mop up behind you. So if you've got a house, and you'll see the enlargement of $250,000. If your assessed value is $250,000, Susan probably can teach this better than I can. And you get taxable valuation of $150,000, you get the statutory homeowners exemption. The annual cost of this bond will be $126.86, or that equates to $10.57 a month. So it's reasonable. We looked at, we could have lowered the payment quite a bit, per month payment, by going with a 20-year bond. but the interest rate is higher because the investments are going to be hedged against a higher interest rate. And the difference over a 10-year period from a 10 to a 20-year was $2.2 million. So by paying it off in 10 years, it saves $2.2 million in financing costs. Any questions about that? Okay, so now we have a short video, and you need the...
In May of 2019, there will be a bond election, and that bond election will be to fund the building of the facility of the new police department. And, you know, that vote is important